Good evening. I hope you can all hear me, because, well, I will just do the introduction in Italian, because there's a lot of people. I'm sure the others have a translation. Thank you very much for being here. We will start for this academic year of the new series of conferences of design talks that we always have here in Scuola Politecnica di Design. It starts in advance according to the usual calendar. You will have the total calendar later on. Let me just introduce our guest today. He's definitely an exceptional guest because he is definitely a very relevant character in the design world and even before in art world. Well, and not only because also his experience is not only limited to Italy. Giovanni Anceschi, he is definitely a person who he says he wants to add more hats to his head. He's a designer, rhetorician, and an artist. I think this sentence really is clear for the idea of what he does in his life, because he does these three things at the same time, simultaneously. He has been among the founders of the Gruppo T, one of the most important groups of the kinetic and programmed art here in the Museum of the 1900s, Museo del Novecento. You see some of his artworks. He has studied in Ulm in the 60s. He has also brought all the teachings of Ulm here in Italy and developed it here, and he has been a figure of design theory here in Italy. Well, especially he has also a teacher in the U of in Venice. Well, just a very complete presentation and introduction about him would be not possible. Thank you very much for being here, and he will tell us about the 1,000 things he does, and he will base his lecture on basic design, which I can also say that through his, one of his scholars is teaching here in Scuola Politecnica Davide Fornari, and he is teaching in one of the courses, and I must say he's a direct scholar of Giovanni Anceschi. Well, thank you very much, Giovanni. Here's a microphone, and of course at the end of the... It's okay, no problem. Thank you very much. At a certain point, I will just stand up. Well, I'm a bit nervous always, and so at a certain point, I'll stand up and I will start speaking from there. Well, obviously, every good speech... So, they have given me these instructions. So, I was saying that each speech which is respectful needs some premise, obviously. Well, you cannot just enter a theme just dumply. Well, this term, this expression, basic design, is not something which is super well known, and it's not so diffused, and people are not so aware about it. The title derives from an expression which has been founded like 20 years ago from an exceptional character. His name is Vignelli, the great Vignelli, that you should all know Vignelli, right? And he has been here, he has done several interviews and so on. Vignelli is a great Italian designer who has now been transferred to the United States. Well, this sentence, which is like a sort of motto, a general motto, is design. He says that design is one thing. He intends that architecture, product design, and communication design, graphics, and so on are the same thing, substantially. There is no difference among them. Well, I am not exactly of the same opinion, and it is very complex to explain in which sense. Well, what But I'm actually really agreeing with this. There is a part of design that design of architecture, architectural design, graphic design, product design, and so on, there is a particular field. Well, that is definitely common to all these disciplines. And this sector has a name, which is an ancient, prestigious, and important name, because it's named basic design in English, but it's the translation of a German expression because it's a concept. It is a concept which has been said in the times of the extraordinary institution, the fundative institution, what has founded our professions, which is the Bauhaus. Well, I say the Bauhaus. I use the masculine term. Believe me, it's right. In Italian, we have two articles, the feminine and masculine. He is using the masculine term. Well, this is something very important, to say il Bauhaus and not la Bauhaus. Well, in particular, according to all designers, all projects, and all the fields and all the sectors of design, well, according to all of these, this part, a part, is in common. Well, I can also explain. Well, designing a piece of architecture is not the same thing as designing a communicative artifact, an object, a communication, and so on. It's not the same thing than designing an object, a tool, a computer, or a chair, and so on, right? These are three different fields of design, but in common, what do they have? Well, what do they have in common? Well, in common, they have something which is a competence, right? A know-how, a capacity, a skill, which is in common among all these, which is the competence of attributing a particular configuration to objects, communications, buildings, and also we could say that deep down this discipline could also be and consider it like a basic design of the territory planning. And well, there is something, and furthermore, the most important thing that we need to mention is that this competence is exactly the competence for which we are paid for. When we go around the world, when we go and work, and we go and just design and offer professionality, well, if we did not have this specific skill and quality, this qualitative competence, this attention for the configuration, for the way in which we plasma and we articulate objects, if we wouldn't have this know-how, well, we would ask ourselves, why don't we need just simply engineers and technicians? I mean, the technicians solve the problem in general, right? But, well, if we really want to reach a standard, a communicative product, the standard of architectural product, and so on, which reach a certain level of quality, well, if we want, and we're worried on the how and not only of the what, well, in this case, we are just practically speaking about basic design. There is another German word, I don't know if this, well, there's a word in German. In the Latin languages, Latin-based languages, this word doesn't exist. No, actually, not even in English. There is a word that exactly translates it, which is Gestaltung. Gestaltung is exactly this capacity of giving shape, attributing a particular shape, not a form and a shape, any one that just turns out, but actually a particular shape. An exact shape. I hear someone here protesting, but so you're a formalist? No, no, I'm not a formalist. It's a form that definitely has to be connected to the uses, to the functions, and so on, right? But you have, well, this is the thing, actually. Designers are responsible exactly of this. Well, they are responsible exactly of the specific configuration that they give to their object. There is well, let me just repeat. For an engineer, let's just do an example. An example is perfect. Well, let's just take an example of an architect. The Calatrava Bridge in Venice, do you have that in mind? Okay, you have that in mind. Great. Well, the bridge designed by Calatrava is a good example of this. He's an engineer. You all know Calatrava is an engineer, right? Well, he didn't limit himself as to work as an engineer and just placing the bridge there, like a thing there that just brings people from one side to the other, right? Of the channel, right? So he has done something very sophisticated. He has also risked in terms of the functional point of view in a certain morphological and formal, too sophisticated things. But okay, besides this, we don't really want to enter in this topic. But you know, he's done a very beautiful bridge in the long run. This is what I believe. It's a bridge that speaks about itself and says, "I'm a bridge." You know. He doesn't just use as a functional element, right? Let's think of Venice and think the Accademia Bridge. Do you have the Accademia Bridge in mind? Well, that is a bridge that says, I'm just a bridge, you know, I'm a poor little bridge. Actually, it's the most pragmatic way of just carrying people from one side to the other. Calatrava says something different. We are actually doing exactly this. The discipline of basic design is the heart of design. So it's the thing which is absolutely specific. I said before, well, it's what they pay us for. They don't pay us, well, of course, naturally, we have to be absolutely aware of all the various shades, technical and technological, of the functionality, and so on, right? We need to be aware of all this, but this is design. And then there's the moment of the configuration. The configuration is this thing, which is the choice in just branching off of several possibilities, which are supplied by all the technical and technological possibilities and all the tools and so on. Well, after all that, we have the choice of that particular configuration, that particular shape. A shape, and how we can say, what do we design? Well, we design communication. In particular, I prevalently do communication design. When I put my hat of the designer, obviously, when I wear that hat, or else I do other things, but in that moment I specifically give a shape. I decide a configuration of a press release, or just well, sometimes I take the risk and I use some difficult words, you know, communicative artifacts, objects produced to communicate. This is the job of designers that work with communication. Well, I design. Well, we can also speak, and now it's pretty clear that we can speak about, it's a long time that we speak about product design. Actually, before we spoke about product design, and now we've transferred this concept also to objects and communication. And we can also say that in the English-speaking countries, we speak about architectural design. Well, and it's very, very precise. Well, we obviously, in our culture, the Latin culture, well, we do not have, let me just repeat, we do not have this type of expression. We just say that this function of a discipline that just combines all the various disciplines is the architectural discipline, according to the Italian tradition, but also the French and so on. There is a discipline that is just up above, and underneath there's all the various other disciplines, which are like some branching offs, right, of this main, there's like some servants of this main discipline, master discipline. This was true maybe in the Middle Ages, or maybe a few centuries after that, but starting from modernity, well, the model of the various disciplines is another, totally different. It's like a round table. It's this round table to which all the disciplines participate and sit around this table, and they start with graphic design. They move to object design, product design, architectural design, and then we can reach the design, like town design, design of towns, designs, or urban design, or we can also speak about urbanistic or territorial design, right? So this is all just to say that the concept of design is one thing, but embedded in all these designs, well, there is a field which is very specific, which is the qualitative. It's the one that says how. It's the one that we really have to state this. We need to be honest. Well, it's what is translated from the moment of a receiver, right, which could be, I don't know, a receiver, an audience who says it's beautiful once he sees a project of design, right? This product is beautiful, this communication is well communicated. I feel pleasure in looking at this. I feel pleasure in using it. It's not only it works. It works is definitely super important for your audience or your spectators to say something like that, or your user. This is just a premise, right? But it's an important premise to collocate this discipline. Let me just repeat. It's a particular area which is included in the great field of design, the macro field of design, which is very complex. There's technology involved, economy, finance. Well, when you design an object or a communication, well, you have sitting around the table, well, a lot of different competences, a lot of know-how. One of this is design, the architect, the graphic designer, and so on. Well, they are specialists. They have the specific know-how and the specific skills of that branch of design, the experts of the form, of the configuration. I prefer to speak about configuration because if you say expert of the shape, you'd say, okay, you're a formalist. No, not at all. Okay, good. Well, we have said it's so hot and so warm here. I mean, we're in the... I don't want to proceed in saying where it seems as if we are, but we're here, but actually... we have said that the basic design has an origin, a moment of origin, and it's precisely when, in reality, there are some stories that I need to tell you. I will show you a few images and we will see them directly so you'll understand better. But the basic design
comincia, dicevo, al
starts, I was
Bauhaus
telling
e
you,
si
it
chiama
starts
in
from
un
the
altro
Bauhaus
modo,
and it's
si
called
chiama Grund.
differently. It's called Grund.
Grundkurs o Grundlehre
Grundkurs,
poi si chiama. Grundkurs vuol dire
Grundkurs
corso
means
di base,
fundamental,
corso di
basic
base,
course, basic.
Grund vuol
Grund.
dire fondamenti
Grund
di
means
base,
ground.
e Grundlehre.
And
Grundlehre vuol dire
Grundlehre
disciplina
means the
dei
discipline
fondamenti
of
stesso.
the fundamentals.
Poi naturalmente
Then obviously,
quando poi
when
voi sapete che
you all
il
know
Bauhaus è
that the
stato chiuso
Bauhaus
in certe
was
circostanze
closed
un
in
po'
certain
piuttosto
circumstances that were
pesantine dal
pretty
punto di vista
heavy,
politico, non
like
so se vi
politically,
ricordate,
right? I don't know if you
che è stata
remember, but
chiusa
it
dai
was
nazisti.
closed down by the Nazis.
Allora
And
cosa è successo?
what
Che
happened,
tutto questo
basically all this
branco, fra l'altro,
group
di grandi
of
artisti,
great
designer, eccetera,
artists, designers, and so on, architects,
Stati
well, all
Uniti,
migrated to the US.
e lì cosa è
And
successo?
what
È successo
happened?
che,
Well, basically there,
come dire, è stato questa eredità è stata
this heritage
rivalutata,
has been
riavviata, eccetera,
restarted,
eccetera.
and
Per esempio,
for example,
a Chicago è
in
stata
Chicago,
aperta
they've
una
opened
scuola che si chiamava
a
New
school
Bauhaus,
called New
dove
Bauhaus,
insegnava Macaulay
where
che era uno
Macaulay
che
Gudge
aveva
was
lavorato
teaching,
nel
a
Bauhaus.
person who worked in the
Questo
Bauhaus.
era,
Well,
e lì appunto
and there,
acquisisce questo nome di
it
basic
acquires
design,
this
no?
name of basic
Di
design.
base, design.
Like the
Che cosa
basic
vuol
design.
dire?
What does it mean?
Che cosa vuol dire design?
What
Cosa
does
vuol dire di base? Questa è la
basic
cosa adesso
design mean?
importante.
This is what is important
Che
as of
cosa
now.
significa
What does it
un design di
mean
base?
to have a
C'è due,
basic
in
design?
fondo,
It has
c'è due significati
two
questa
meanings.
espressione.
This
Di
expression has
base,
two
il
meanings.
design di base è un po' come,
Basic design,
voi
it is
conoscete
something
l'espressione
that,
basic English, no?
you know the expression basic
Significa
English?
cioè gli elementi
The
necessari.
elements which are necessary.
Basic English vuol dire quell'inglese,
Basic English
quegli
is
elementi
that
necessari dell'inglese per
basic
poter
English
parlare,
that you
per
need,
poter
use to
comunicare.
communicate,
Minimo,
to
insomma,
speak, the minimum, the
non
indispensable,
l'indispensabile
the
per
indispensable to
comunicare. Cioè, ciò
communicate.
che è
And therefore
assolutamente
it is
necessario
what is absolutely necessary to have.
Quindi in concreto basic
And
design
therefore
vuol dire
tangibly,
c'ha
basically,
una
basic
valenza,
design has
anche
a
qui una parola
valence
un po' pomposa,
which is
propedeutica.
propedeutica.
Cosa vuol dire
Propedeutical. What does it
Appunto, vuol
mean?
dire,
Well, it means
devi,
that you
per
have
comunicare,
to
devi
communicate,
sapere
you need to know certain things, some basics, or else, if you don't know these, if you don't know how to practice these things, it's a bit risky for you to work in this field. This is the propedeutical aspect. And in fact, in the times of the Bauhaus, well, we were at the first year, right? And there was this course on basic design. But actually, I really just want to stop speaking about this topic because basic design doesn't limit itself on this propedeutical function. It is not only this. Basic design is a basic function. Basic means it's fundative. It means that in teaching, when you teach something, well, you have to structure this knowledge and you have to articulate and you have to choose what are the important things that you want to teach. And therefore, in some way, you also have to, at least in your mind, or or in a disciplinary formulation, you need to articulate the fundaments of the foundations of a discipline. If what you're communicating is indispensable, well, it is obvious that you need to have clearly in mind what are the fundaments, right? What are the foundations, the fundamental elements? So originally, back in the time of the Bauhaus, well, like for example, these courses were a perspective which was an elementarist perspective and an elementary perspective. So at that time we had in mind the fact that the communication was like a sort of language of which we need to know the constitutive elements like the grammar and so on.
sono degli elementi.
And therefore,
Adesso
these
noi abbiamo
are some
un'idea
fundamental
un pochino
elements.
più
We have an idea
sofisticata e
which is more
articolata di questa
sophisticated and
questione. Però insomma in
articulated
qualche
of this
modo
matter. And therefore, in some way,
a monte del nostro
just
progettare noi anche
moving
dobbiamo
onto the basis
se non sono
of
proprio
our
degli
design,
elementi
well, if they are not some elements which are necessarily simple and so on, they are definitely some fundamental elements.
Sono delle
They
questioni
are some
fondamentali
matters
quelle che noi
which
dobbiamo
are
affrontare.
fundamental.
Quindi questo significa,
Therefore, this
questo
means
significa basic,
this means basic, propedeutical, and foundation.
Proprio si può quasi dire
This we can say
fondazione disciplinare.
the disciplinary
Perché la nostra
foundation,
disciplina
because our discipline,
si appoggia su, come abbiamo
which
detto, su
is
tutte le altre-
based
su tutti gli
on
elementi della
all the elements of
costruzione,
design, very complex, technical and technological, and like psychology, physiology, and sociology, and so on and so forth. Well, when it's actually our turn, we need to choose shapes, configurations.
Bene.
Well, good.
Sì, in una certa misura.
Yes, in a
Ecco, c'è
certain
una
way.
cosa però
Well,
molto
there is one
particolare
thing which
di
is very
questi
particular
fondamenti.
of these
Quando uno
foundations.
dice fondamenti,
Well, when we say
mi viene in
foundation,
mente
you
sicuramente
think,
fondamenti
well,
di
for
matematica,
sure,
no?
like the
Fondamenti di
mathematical
matematica.
foundation.
Voi avete studiato matematica,
I'm sure
da qualche
you
parte
studied
sicuramente
math
vi è
somewhere
arrivato
sooner or
di
later,
questa
and
idea
for sure you have this
a
idea
monte, per
where
così dire,
just
della matematica
before math
c'è
there
c'è
is
c'è
and
una
there
disciplina che
was
sono i-
a
cioè che
discipline
sono
which are
il 2 più
the
2,
the 2 plus 2,
dire,
right?
anche lì, che
Fundamentals
sono
of
gli
math,
elementi
which are
indispensabili,
the
le componenti
indispensable
per
elements
poi
and components
viaggiare
that you
attraverso
need
tutta la
to then go
varietà
through
complessa,
all
eccetera,
the
di
complex
questi
variety of math, right?
I nostri
Well,
fondamenti
our
però
fundamentals
non sono
are
fondamenti statici,
not
o
static
comunque
fundamentals
definitivi,
or
ma sono
definite.
fondamenti,
They are actual
anche qui una
fundaments.
parola
This
un
is
po'
another
insolita,
word which is a bit unusual. They are
sono
adaptive.
fondamenti
They are adaptive. They
sono
are
fondamenti che col
fundamentals
cambiare del
which,
tempo si
with
devono
the changing
adattare
of
alle
time,
alle
they
fasi
have to adapt
tecnologiche.
to
Faccio
the
subito un
technological
esempio,
phases. Let me just give you an
la
example.
situazione
Let
che
me just
viviamo adesso.
tell you about the
Come
situation
vi ho
we're living
accennato.
as of now.
Nella
Well,
modernità, cioè
in
negli
modernity,
anni, voi sapete, però,
you all
Bauhaus,
know, I've
quindi
spoken
siamo
about
negli anni
Bauhaus,
10,
we're in the
20, no? 10,
well, like
20,
1910, 1920s of the past century, and
e poi a un certo
well,
punto,
at a certain point,
però e quella è la modernità,
it's
e quello è
modernity, right? And that
quando
is
si dice
when
virgolette, il
you say
linguaggio
the
della
language of
modernità è un
modernity.
linguaggio
Well, it's a language
composto da elementi
composed by
semplici, un
simple
linguaggio
elements,
non-
language which is
che non si confronta
a
con la
language which
complessità.
does not confront itself
Oggi le
with
cose sono molto
complexity. Well,
cambiate.
nowadays things have
Oggi
changed
pur
incredibly.
le cose sono
Well,
veramente molto
things
cambiate.
are very
Oggi,
different nowadays.
il mondo
Well,
che noi
the
anche
world
indossiamo,
that
no?
we wear,
Indossiamo i
we
computer, ma non
wear,
sono solo i computer,
or
ma
maybe
anche-
it's all the things we
ma anche
use,
tutti
like
gli iPhone,
the computers,
tutti gli
the iPhones,
e tutte queste
and all those
attrezzature, eccetera,
technical equipment that we use or tools.
e questi sono
And
solo, come
these
dire,
are just
le cose
the
con le quali
the
entriamo
things
in
with
contatto
which we get in
direttamente,
direct
ma dietro
contact
tutto questo
with, but
ci sono
behind
delle-
all
tutto
this,
un
there
sistema di
are
realtà,
just the
di un
systems of
mondo
different
in cui in
realities
pratica
of
queste
a
qui sono
world
solo le
which are
interfacce,
just the
che è un
interface,
mondo,
which
si dice ormai oggi,
is a world
liquido,
that we
no?
call it
Trasformabile,
liquid,
è un
transformable,
mondo che
right?
non
It's
è
a world
più
which
come
is not
pensavano
as
ai tempi della modernità.
in the times of modernity, people used to think, like around the 30s, well, it's not something stable, it's not something which has been constructed of small bricks, right? It's the world is something different now. So the basic of those times was a very element basic. So based on constitutional elements, which are things that we are very interested in a certain measure, but just with a different point of view. Well, because designing color, shapes, and so on, all the constitutional elements of a project are important, but we're concerned with them differently. The basic, and we will move on and seeing, well, it's true that you're all tired and it's late and maybe
Dicevo,
but I was saying now
the
the basic that we are speaking of is a different basic. The basic is a metamorphosis. It's a transformational basic. It's a basic which is a basic that deals with interaction. That basic design, it's not basic, it's a basic design of interaction. It's a basic of the relations. Rather, how you can all notice the basic, the initial basic, let me see if it works. Yeah, good. No. This, well, I had told you, right? Compared to the basic and compared to the Bauhaus, well, there are also some previous things, right? Well, this is pretty fun, actually, to take a look at this. These are some research held by some British researchers that study shapes, the shapes of nature, exactly, and they are, in fact, just several shapes and configurations of the liberty style, or how was the liberty called, right? It was dealing with plants and so on, right? And so I'm sure you all have the liberty style with all those curls and squiggles and all those leaves. It all originates from this. This are some other research which were held in the beginning of the 1900s. This is a French researcher. I can't really remember his name. Sorry, it's a defiance. My memory is not helping me as of now. I can't remember the name of this researcher. But, well, he was designing textile design, and he's designing the structures and the weaves of articulating a fabric. Well, here we are at Bauhaus, finally. So here, how I told you, here's like a climax. See? Well, what happens in Bauhaus? Well, in Bauhaus, something very fun happens according to this point of view. Well, those who had started the school, well, they start asking themselves, but who could we actually address to teach our students to give the right configuration, to give shape to things? Well, and the answers were, I know several artists which are very sophisticated, very good and talented, one called Kandinsky, and another called Klee. Well, this is also something which is, you have to keep in mind somewhere in your mind, right, that the basic originates from this, it originates from there. I mean, it originates at this level. And it originates, and here there was one of the two, which is Kandinsky, wrote a book which is called Dot Line Surface. And this is an exercise that he has done before going to teach at the Bauhaus. This is a marvelous thing. Personally, this is my personal judgment, okay? That I say that it's marvelous. I'm passionate of this kind of art. But it's my personal judgment, once again. And this is Klee. And this is something very interesting. Unfortunately, I do not have a bigger image or easier to read, but Klee, what has he done for the Bauhaus? Well, Kandinsky has done something also, but Klee in particular has edited. Well, one thing which is very important that you have to keep in mind is they call these two and others, but they call these primarily, and they tell them, and these are artists. They are artists. They have their own theory, or how can we say, they have their own poetics, their figurative poetics, right? They have their autonomous model. And they find themselves facing the problem that this thing has to be transmitted. They find themselves in this particular situation, right? What I have in mind, I need to communicate. And therefore, we are assisting, like, for example, this book We are actually assisting in real time, we're assisting to the transformation of a personal poetic, individualistic, in a, well, actually they at that time they were hoping that this was an objective theory. They were speaking about objectiveness. They were speaking about something that could be measurable, something that could be confronted. Now we are a bit more safe, but the effort is fitting in this same idea, right? We are not hoping that the things that turn out in the basic work as some true objective, undoubtful, but in reality, they are intersubjective, which means that it's a reality that is around which a few people, like a plurality of people, agree. Let's proceed. Well, this man, this artist, transforms his poetic into a book, and this book becomes like a type of book of fundamentals. Do you know how this was entitled? It was, if I'm not mistaken, like the theories of the form or the theories of the shape, and that of configuration. The title is figurazione in Italian, but that's an old word. It's an old translation which doesn't really keep in mind that the correct word of gestaltum is configurazione, not figurazione, but nothing too serious. I mean, it's just that we can go on with this. No. Okay, here we are. This is an exercise that was done in a class by Clay, and this is an exercise with color, and it looks like very many other exercises that he has done with other criteria. But you can all notice its elements. It's what is the main theme here? The control of the configuration. It's asking the shapes to do exactly what you want them to do, not to do just something by chance, right? You have to control exactly the shape. This is still true nowadays. Sorry if I'm jumping from one topic to the other, but it's something which is still true nowadays. This is Ethan. Well, this is a very particular case where Ethan was another artist who worked in basic design. Well, this in reality is a figurative project. Like, true, it represents a card, and it starts from another interesting aspect, which is the fundamental, which is the fact of using your gestures, communication. Well, I don't really want to start talking about these great historians of the semiotic, great mass, and so on, but the communication is linked directly to the matter of gestures. And he asked his students to do these kind of exercises. This, I mean, propedeutical, like doubly propedeutical, twice. I mean, in the sense that this is asking the people and putting these people in the conditions of just like loosening out their wrists before they started drawing. This was an exercise where you could like train your wrists to move, and this derives from a work of like a training. It's like it's like just going to the gym. I mean, it's like yoga. Yeah, just like yoga. It's like a principle which is very close to yoga, actually. And Itten was an Orientalist and was strongly linked to Orientalism. Another figure always that followed the Bauhaus was another man, Moholy-Nagy. Well, probably Iten, you can not know him, but the fact that you don't know Molinaggi, well, then in this case, I would actually scold you and just beat you. He is a figure who's very, very important. Well, his characteristic has been at those times to strongly push the accelerator on what are the new technologies nowadays. Well, he has done photographic design, he has done cinematographic design, and he also had another key role, which is also very important. He was very interested into the fact that communication of objects and so on for their audience, they are not linked to one unique sense. They are not done only for your eyes, for example, one of your senses, right? This is an exercise that was incredible, which was done for these students, and practically it was evaluated with their eyes shut. And these are tactile sculptures. Because when this is true also for those of you who do product design, well, this is absolutely important and relevant to the fact that you keep in mind that the objects and the results are objects that people may touch. This is a case, and it's an exercise of basic design of the course that was held at the new Bauhaus in Chicago, right? How I was telling you, right? About the Bauhaus that is held in the United States. And he does basic, like it's filming, basic filming. And then what happens? How I told you, right? I mentioned briefly that in Germany, where these things all originate and where they're all founded, well, there is like a small incident, well, how can we call it, an accident called Nazism. And all the people and all the designers and all the architects, almost all of them, were somewhere else, right? And not in Germany. And when the Nazis rise to power, I said almost, because recently, unfortunately, I have discovered that someone that I adore, called Behrens, well, had worked for the Nazis. But let's just close this chapter, okay? I don't want to talk about this. And all the others, well, substantially, when this disaster occurs, and, well, of course, Nazism closes the Bauhaus. They close the Bauhaus, and all these artists and all these designers just go to the States. And there is the war. And what happens? One thing happens, actually, that in Germany, they found a school, a design school, and originally it was not only a design school, it was actually thought as a sort of liberal university, like a free university, complete with all the various disciplines, and then all of a sudden, it's founded. Why? Because the Americans reinvest in Germany, and they reinvest the war debt. You know what a war debt is, right? It's a rule, right? If one would lose the war, they had to pay the real big quantity of money to the winner, right? The winner, in this case, it was pretty illuminated, and what happens, they decide to reinvest the money they won, basically, with the war, and a part of this investment is done and given to this group of people, which is extremely interesting, here it is.
Tommaso.
Well, no, this is
No,
Tomas.
dopo.
Nothing, sorry. Later on.
Viene dato
Well, it's
poi
given
non so se,
to.
se è una nozione
I don't
per
know if
voi
this is
esistente,
an
la
existing
rosa
information.
bianca.
You know
La rosa bianca era,
the white rose.
c'è stato un bellissimo
Well,
film,
there has been a very
magari
nice movie on
un
this,
film molto bello dedicato alla rosa bianca, che era
dedicated to the
un
white
gruppo di
rose, which was
uno dei pochi, dei due, mi
one
pare, se
of the
ricordo bene,
two, if I'm not
gruppi di
mistaken,
resistenza
like
al nazismo.
resistant groups
Uno
to
è
the
quello che ha
Nazis.
messo la bomba
One is the
sotto,
one that has put the bomb,
sotto
placed the
il
bomb
tavolo di Hitler,
under the
che
table
adesso
of
non
Hitler.
ricordo più il nome
I
di
can't
questo
remember the name of this
importantissimo
very
eroe,
important hero,
tedesco,
and German
e poi l'altra erano
man,
questi
and
giovani
then
della
the
rosa
others
bianca.
were these young
Questi giovani
of
della rosa
this white
bianca
rose.
avevano poi
Well,
avevano
they
una sorellina
had
che
a
si
small
chiamava
little
Scholl.
sister. They were
Si
called
chiamava Scholl,
Scholl,
avevano una sorellina
and they
che si
had a
chiamava
sister
Inge
called
Scholl,
Inge Scholl,
e
and
questa
this
ha
girl
lavorato
has
con,
worked with
con le istituzioni
the
tedesche,
institutions
eccetera,
of
eccetera.
German
Insomma, e ha
institutions,
lavorato
and
per
she has
fondare,
worked to fund
per fondare questa
this
prima questa università libera,
university,
poi
this free
siccome
university,
i soldi non
and
erano
because
enormi,
the funds were not enormous, well,
appunto di scegliere
they have thought
che
to
cosa?
choose what?
Di scegliere il Bauhaus.
Well, to choose the
E hanno
Bauhaus,
fondato la
and they have founded the
Hochschulen
Hochschulen
scuola superiore per
which is the
la
superior, like
configurazione, no?
high
Scuola
school for
superiore
configuration,
della configurazione, che era il sottotitolo
which
del
was the
Bauhaus.
subtitle of the
Il Bauhaus,
Bauhaus.
quello-
Well, the
quello
Bauhaus,
degli anni
which
10
was
e
the
20,
one of the
si
1910,
chiamava
1920s,
Staatliches Bauhaus,
is called
cioè
Staatliches
Bauhaus
Bauhaus,
statale dello
which
Stato.
means the Bauhaus of the
E
government, government
sottotitolo era
Bauhaus. And the
Hochschule,
subtitle
scuola
was
superiore,
high
istituto
school.
superiore, diremmo, insomma,
We
non
could
scuola
say
superiore
like
nel
high
senso-
school
istituto superiore per la
For
configurazione.
the
Proprio per la
configuration.
configurazione. Pensate che buffo.
and think,
proprio per
I
quella,
mean,
la
for
competenza lì.
that
no?
precise
Per quella
competence,
competen-
the competence
era quella
of
la
configuration,
competenza
that's
veramente
actually the
specifica.
specific
Bene.
competence of configuration.
Questo qua è
This
un
is
signore
a very important
importante. Questo è
man,
molto signore. Questo
very
si
important.
chiama Tomás Maldonado.
Thomas
Anche questo
Maldonado.
dovreste
Well, I
conoscerlo.
think you should know him.
Sì, veramente dovreste
Yes,
conoscerlo.
you
Anche
should
perché
absolutely
vive
know
in
him.
Italia.
Because he lives in
Ha
Italy.
90 anni,
He's
ma vive in
90 years
Italia.
old, but he lives in Italy.
Ed è stato una
And he
figura
has been a
importantissima.
relevant figure, starting from the Yom period, the 50s, all the way to nowadays. And he is still pretty important, actually. Well, what does he do? Well, you know what he does as of now? Well, he's,
Pittore
after being a painter, abstractist
poi è
in
venuto-
Argentina,
poi è venuto
Then he
in Europa
came to
al seguito
Europe
di Max P.
with Max
questo
P,
grande,
with this
designer.
great designer.
Ecco, lui sì era uno che unificava.
Well, he was definitely one
architetto,
who would
designer,
combine all the
architetto,
disciplines:
designer,
architect, product design, communication design. Well,
lui al seguito hanno fondato, lui
They
ha
have
il-
founded-
ha fondato,
he
nel senso,
has founded
la scuola di Ulm.
the school.
Maldonado è stato il suo
Maldonado has
assistente.
been his
Poi a un
assistant,
certo punto hanno
and then
anche
at a certain
litigato.
point they had a
E,
fight.
ha
They
preso
argued
Maldonado, ha
about
preso il suo
something,
posto, è
and
diventato lui
Maldonado
rettore
just
della scuola.
took the place
Ma nel
and as a
frattempo,
director of the
che cosa
youth
aveva
school.
fatto Maldonado?
And what did
Nel
Maldonado
frattempo
do in the
Maldonado
meantime? Well,
aveva
Maldonado
dato una,
had
si chiama proprio ha fatto la riforma della
has
Grundlehre, cioè del
created
basic
the
design.
reform
Ha
of
fatto una
Grundlehre,
straordinaria
the reform
riforma.
of basic design.
Perché se ci pensiamo bene,
If we think about it,
con tutta la
with
straordinarietà
all the
eccezionalità,
extraordinary
sia dei
exceptionality of the
protagonisti
protagonist,
che del lavoro che facevano
as
fare
well
gli
of the
studenti,
work
perché
that the
era-
students
capite,
do, well,
era
you
un
do understand that this was a
laboratorio, un
lab.
grande
This was a
laboratorio
great
dove-
lab
dove
where
arrivavano questi
these
personaggi,
people would come
ponevano un tema,
and they would just,
un
I don't know,
tema
just launch a theme,
gestaltico,
a gestaltic
configurativo,
theme, a
e su quello
configurative
tutti gli
theme,
studenti
and on all
lavoravano.
that, all the
Così
students will
funzionava.
work on.
Con Maldonado,
With
la cosa
Maldonado,
cambia.
things
La cosa
change.
cambia radicalmente.
Things change radically.
Cambia perché?
They
Perché
change because
vengono introdotte
they start
sia,
introducing,
cioè lui prende
He
posizione,
just
diciamo,
takes
contro,
uh, he takes
un
a stance
eccessivo
against an
creativismo
excessive creativism.
o
He takes a
inventivismo
stance
del
against the
basic, cioè,
creativism
perché
and
sono-
inventivism of the basic. Well, he goes against the formula of the original basic, which was still too similar to the art schools and the artistic institutions, the academies of art academies, right? And he said, well, they just did experimentations there. Rather, here the basic becomes another thing. It becomes another thing. First of all, we're actually introducing systematically some scientific components. In particular, the basic. No, actually, the first thing that Maldonado does, he articulates basic against the idea of basic design. He does some specific basics, one for architecture, industrialized architecture. There were 3 courses, one which was industrialized architecture, the other was product design, and the other was visual and communication. And he does 3, he starts up 3 basics. So he is already specializing, and it's evident that in some measure there are, well, we will take a look at this, but I have to stop talking and just show you, because this is a scheme, this is a funny guy who studied architecture, and how you can see here there's the architectural basic, the structural basic. It's a basic that he's wearing. I mean, if I'd seen this without knowing, I would just say he's from the Bauhaus, because it really seems something from the Bauhaus. It's not Bauhaus, but it's and these are experimentations, structural experimentations. It's a sort of studies to make a surface stable, of a certain matter, make it rigid, or make it light, or make it structurally bearing. Good. So this is architectural basic, this is perceptive basic, so this is this, well, there is also there are also some thoughts on which start from the theory of information, right? And this is product, and it's the basic of the product design. Right? First architectural, then communication, and now this is product. So this, for example, these are topological experimentation, and in particular the most interesting thing are the 2, my left side, therefore for you guys it's the right side, these like sort of columns, which are, these are some studies, morphological studies, which are involved in well, now, I can, well, maybe you know this already, but now, well, this stuff is done by computers, right? You know what in-betweening is? Well, that's an in-between operation. Well, here you see it in a very interesting thing that computers decide by themselves what they have to do. So like that in-between of shapes. Rather, starting from the same initial shape with the same final shape, there could be some different ways of in-betweening. You can notice that here it's the shape, it's the configuration which is what important. The decision that we take as designers. So we've seen this, and he does exactly this. He specializes. This, for example, is an important case of well, another thing which is important is that changes compared to basic of at the Grun course in the Bauhaus, well, is that
nel caso dell'esercitazione
in the case of the
prende
exercise, well,
molto
it
importanza, una forte importanza
we see a great importance of the text,
grazie, il testo della
the
formulazione
test of the
dell'esercitazione.
formulation of the
Questa per
exercise.
esempio è
So this, for
un'esercitazione
example,
che
is an exercise that
stabilite alcune
once we have
componenti
fixed
definite
specific
in maniera
components
rigorosa dal
and we have
punto di vista
defined some
geometrico,
rigorous geometric components,
matematico, eccetera,
right, or
eccetera.
mathematic
Fra l'altro c'è una
formulas,
parolaccia che
and
la
there is
userò solo per
also
farvi
a
paura.
bad word that I want to use right now, which is
trasformazioni singenometriche,
syngeometric
in
transformation,
tedesco. Cioè, insomma,
which
deformazioni
are
continue.
just continuous
Cioè, le
deformations.
palline,
This is basically
insomma,
what it means.
i
So,
pixel
like the
sono
pixels
piccoli,
here
poi
are
crescono,
small and they grow,
in modo
and they do this in a syngeometric way.
E qui, allora, dato questo,
And given
però,
this piece of information,
allo studente
the
veniva
student
detto,
was
dato un compito preciso.
just briefed with a precise task, right?
Sperimentiamo
Not like in the case of
sui
before
pallini.
where we said, let's experiment with, I
Non
don't know, dots,
no.
right? No, we're not experimenting.
Voi dovete produrre
You were
un
assigned
effetto
an effect which is concave and convex. Oh,
Adesso qui bisogna vedere se poi questo
let's see if this very good student
ha ottenuto
has
questa,
obtained
no? E questo
the
è
result.
e
But
questo discorso che sto
this
facendo in questo
thing
momento
that
è
I'm
anche
just
un altro
telling you,
discorso
it's also
chiave.
some other
È
key element,
importantissimo.
and it's very, very
Se
important
voi
because if you recognize the fact that the first one on the left should be concave,
il secondo a destra
the
deve
other
essere
should be
convesso,
convex,
questo dovrà essere
this one
ambiguo,
I think should be
questo dovrà
ambiguous,
essere piano.
and that should be flat.
Siamo d'accordo?
Do we agree?
Abbastanza?
Pretty much?
No,
No?
sì, no,
Yeah,
ecco,
but
allora,
maybe.
questo
Well,
che stiamo facendo in
This
questo momento,
that we're doing
in questo istante,
right now, in this particular
stiamo
moment, when
praticando
we are actually
esattamente una componente
practicing a
importantissima
very
del
important
basic,
component
e
of the
che è
basic, which
la
is
valutazione
the
non soggettiva,
not
non
the subjective
oggettiva. Non c'è
evaluation,
un
not
metro per
objective. There is
misurare
no
queste
like
cose,
meter stick to
ma
measure all
c'è
this, but there
l'intersoggettività,
is
cioè
the
una popolazione
intersubjectiveness,
di
right?
persone,
A population of people,
un
a
insieme
group
di
of
soggetti,
people
valuta
evaluates
e
evaluates and
decide. Che
decides.
chi decide
Who
se
decides
l'effetto è
if the
ottenuto?
effect is obtained or
Una
not?
pluralità di
Just a
soggetti.
plurality of
Nello
people.
specifico,
In the
nel caso
specific,
specifico,
in the
la
specific
classe,
case,
no?
the
Il
class, the
questo,
group,
questo particolare
this
gruppo
particular
proprietario
group,
importantissimo
and
che è
very
la
important, which is a class.
classe.
Oh.
Allora, questa è un'altra
So this is
esercitazione
another
importantissima,
exercise which is
che
very
si chiama
important, which is
l'antiprima
called
donna.
the
Si chiama l'antiprima
anti-first
donna. Allora,
lady.
qui la battuta
Well,
dice,
here's the joke.
chi sapete
Says
chi l'ha
that
inventata?
you
L'ha
know who
inventata
invented
appunto
this?
Tommaso
Thomas
il
Maldonado.
quale, se c'è
Thomas
una prima
Maldonado
donna
says
nel
if
mondo
there is a
del
first
design,
lady in design,
Ed è
it's
divertente che
Maldonado.
lui abbia
And it's funny
prima
how
donna,
he
nel senso,
said,
sapete,
the
lui
like
ha
first
approfittato
lady,
da
you know.
questo perché
Well,
essere
I mean,
prima donna, perché
he's a
altrimenti
first lady because he's 2 meters high. I mean, he shows himself pretty. He's from Argentina.
mi viene da dire, ma sì, lo dico,
Well,
fichissimo,
like he's a super hunk.
È un signore.
I want to say this. I mean, he's incredible. I mean, he's a super hunk, 2 meters high, and he speaks like in this Italian accent. Like he speaks Italian with this accent a bit from Argentina, right? He's marvelous.
Grande filosofo
A
della
great
scienza,
philosopher of
originariamente
science, and he's originally an artist,
artista concretista
like
del
a
periodo,
concrete
della pittura
artist
concreta in Argentina.
of the concrete to tangible art in Argentina.
Filosofo della
Then
scienza,
teacher Ulm,
grandissimo
director Ulm,
accademico
a great
italiano, una specie di
academic.
papa del design
He's like the
italiano.
Pope of Italian
E poi
design.
ritorna,
And then
più divertente di tutti, e adesso ha ritornato a fare il pittore.
He's
Questa è la
back
cosa
at
che
being a
mi-
painter.
me
This is a funny thing. I mean, this is
moltissimo,
something that
anche
makes me
perché
laugh because also because it
tutta una
breaks
serie di favole
several like fairy tales
sull'anti-artisticità
on the
di Ulm. Ma comunque, lasciamo perdere.
anti-artistic traits of Ulm
Però questa
school.
esercitazione,
And therefore,
questa qui
this
è-
exercise, well, going back to this exercise,
voglio
I
brevissimamente
want to
dire
just briefly tell
Le-
you
la
that
formula, il testo,
the
diciamo,
text
il testo
the
che
text
veniva dato agli
that was
studenti
given to
com'era?
the students. Well, how was the text?
C'è un
Well,
rettangolo
there is a
orizzontale.
rectangle, a horizontal
Dividete
rectangle.
questo
Divide
rettangolo
this
orizzontale in
into
7 bande,
seven,
sei bande
six,
verticali.
vertical parts.
Avete a
You have
disposizione,
available,
e questa è come la
and this is
scacchiera,
just
no?
like a
Del
chessboard.
gioco
I
degli
mean, it's
scacchi.
just
Una
like
scacchiera.
a
I
chessboard.
pezzi che avete a
The pieces
disposizione
that
per
you have
giocare
available
sono
to play
o
are
colori piatti
either
o
flat, solid dies, or
rettini in bianco e nero.
like
Colori
these
piatti o rettini in bianco e
patterns,
nero.
black and
Il
white.
goal,
The
l'obiettivo, la
goal,
cosa, la
the objective,
prescrizione
the
che viene fatta,
prescription
quello che
that
voi
you
dovete
given,
raggiungere,
the briefing, what you need to
è
obtain
ottenere
is
che
obtaining
nessuna
that none
delle parti,
of the parts,
nessuna delle parti
none of the
dell'immagine
parts of the image
giochi il ruolo di prima donna.
play the role of
Salti
the first
fuori,
lady, therefore stands out too much.
Allora adesso
And therefore,
vi dirò vi
will
svelerò un segreto.
we'll give you just tell you a secret.
Lo
The
studente
author, the
che ha fatto
student
questo
who has
sono io.
done this drawing, it's
Ai
me.
tempi, negli
It's
anni
me.
60,
I was, what was it?
63 mi pare,
63
non mi
maybe?
ricordo,
I can't
l'altro
remember.
secolo,
The other
No,
century?
ricordatevi, sì, 67 è l'altro secolo. E adesso
And
vi
also
domando,
here,
io la risposta la so.
I
È
know the
risolto
answer.
molto bene questo.
Is this solved well or not?
Non è granché.
No, it's not great,
Questo studente
This student
non è stato
has
troppo,
not
troppo,
been
troppo
too
bravo. In
good
particolare
actually.
c'è
In
una
particular, there is an
C'è
area.
una zona molto
There's an
critica.
area which is
Qual è la
very
zona molto
critical.
critica?
Which area is critical?
esattamente
It's
il
exactly
fra
the
il nero,
boundary between the black and that pattern.
quel confine lì.
See that
Anche-
boundary there?
Naturalmente è anche equilibrato
It's
dall'irritatività
balanced
anche
by
dell'altro.
the
Però
other
questo è
one,
molto
but this one is very strong,
Questo-
right? And so
quello che
this,
bisogna fare
what
facendo
you
questa
have to do
esercitazione,
this exercise,
guardate, è una roba troppo
and
divertente
it's something
da fare,
so
anche
fun to
questa,
do,
no?
really, it's really fun to do, playing with these,
È quella di fare in modo che
is to
nessuna
make
delle
sure
parti,
that none of the parts,
nessuna delle parti
none
attiri
of the
sufficiente
parts
attenzione.
attracts the attention.
Nessuna delle parti
None
non
of the
una
parts,
banda, ma anche appunto un
like also a
confine fra due
group, a
bande,
boundary
eccetera,
between the
eccetera.
two, none of this
Questo
figure
è
should attract your
assolutamente-
attention. This
Ma
is
perché allora
why then
ma
you might
quando è
ask
che
yourself,
serve
then when do
una
we
roba
need
così,
to do
no?
something
Uno
like
si
this?
può
I mean,
domandare,
why would I need
quando
to
è che
do something
serve
like
nel
that?
progetto vero
Why
e
do I
proprio?
need to do
Non è
this
che
for a
serve
project, for my future?
questo.
You don't really
Qualche
need
volta
this, but
potrebbe anche servire
well, sooner or
esattamente
later you might
padroneggiare in questo
need
modo
this
i-
to
i-
eventually know
le
how
forme, le
shapes
morfologie,
and
le
morphological
strutture, eccetera.
structures
Ma
have to be
certamente,
treated.
ma
But certainly,
certamente,
absolutely,
sicuramente,
and
buona parte del
certainly
lavoro di progetto,
the
in
work
particolare del
of
progetto di
the design, and in
comunicazione,
particular the communication of design
capacità di
projects,
costruire
is having the
gerarchie.
capacity of creating hierarchy.
Allora, se tu sei
Well,
capace
if you
di
know how to do a
annullare tutte le
hierarchy,
gerarchie,
well, and you are
sicuramente
capable
sei
of
bravo,
canceling them at the same time,
invece
well,
sarai
you
bravo
are
a fare
very
in
good,
modo
and
a
you will be very
pilotare
good,
con
and we will be
sottigliezza
very capable
la
of
gerarchizzazione, no? È chiaro,
like
oppure
addressing the hierarchies
non mi
as you
spiego.
please, or maybe I'm not
Se tu
explaining
sei bravo
myself.
a fare
Well,
sì,
if you are
se tu
good
sei bravo, se tu hai capito come
and you
funziona
have
la baracca,
understood how this method works in obtaining the fact that none of these parts are a first lady in this project, so none of these pieces yells, I'm the protagonist. Well, if you're capable of doing this, you will be capable of doing also the other thing, exactly the opposite, which is substantial. Let's just do an example. Okay. So, if you have to design, I don't know, a magazine, a website, or whatever, let's say a magazine, okay? And there is a problem right, of the hierarchy, right? Of all the subtitle, the captions, the fonts, how big, how small. This is the hierarchy, right? And it could be pretty interesting to do an exercise using those elements, right? Rather than these. Always trying to obtain the fact that none of the parts are the protagonist. Let's go on. I think actually I'm killing you guys, right? I adore him.
Voi avete visto come io voglio bene.
You see how I really love Maldonado, right? You understand that. Maldonado was my total teacher. I mean, he has been
fatto l'artista.
Well, I've been an artist, and then I became a designer, product designer, actual communication designer, very many things. And then I've done all this career in university, Italian university, and then I went back to be an artist because now I am an artist. If it happens to you, let me just tell you, yeah, I want to do a bit of advertising. Why not? But if you have the chance, go to the Museo del Novecento, and in this moment in particular, there is an exhibition at the 4th floor. There is an exhibition called Programming Art.
Ed è posizionata al quarto piano. Al quarto piano
ed
è una mostra che era stata
fatta
negli
anni
62
in
Italia,
Italy,
con
with
guidata la mostra, il regista e il
the
caposcuola
director,
di tutta
like the
questa
curator of
era
all this was Bruno Munari.
Perché Bruno Munari aveva fatto questa mostra che è stata
which has been the first important exhibition of this movement.
Movimento che tra l'altro lì allo stesso piano poi ci sono ben 4 ambienti fatti da 4 autori del gruppo T.
And authors of the group T, Anceschi, Moriani, Colombo, and always there in the same area. There is this historical and it's a very important exhibition, which is a founding exhibition, a bit basic in terms of the developments.
Adesso vi faccio un altro piccolo
gioco
autopromozionale.
I want to do another
promotion. Non auto, ma promozionale.
It's not self-promoting. Go to Hangar Bicocca. You have to go to Hangar Bicocca, please. I mean, Hangar Bicocca. There are 2 artists of an incredible relevance. One is what's his name? Saraceno. And the other is called Karsten Nicolai. Karsten Nicolai. I mean, these 2, they are some people who derive from the Gruppo T of Arte Cinetica Programmata, Cinetic Art and Programming. Let's just close all this chapter and let's move on. Alberts. Well, Alberts was an incredible figure. I'm so happy that we see Alberts together with Inge Scholl. You know Inge Scholl, we spoke about her before, right? Sitting on the side of a terrace in New. Alberts was first at the Bauhaus, taught basic in Bauhaus, and this is basic of Alberts. And then, at a certain point, when he had to go to the States, he's gone to the Black Mountain College, and then he's gone to Yale, and he has done a monument. He has done an incredible thing of the entire history of design, of theory, of practice of design. He has written a book. He has done several workshops with students which were entitled All Interaction of Color. Interaction of color. Interaction of color. And therefore, exercises on color. The basic of color. So, according to your opinion, it's intersubjectiveness again. We're always at that point. Whoa, okay. The square above and below, are they different or the same color? They are the same color, but it's not true. You know the answer. I don't see them identical. You are lying. You are lying. You know what's the answer, and so not what you see. So the matter is exactly that. This is the thing. I mean, there are some knowledge. You know that, and practically, I mean, our profession is that of manipulating things which exist to obtain some effects which are communicative effects. So we manipulate what is to produce what appears. We just want to create an appearance. Our job is pure appearance. It's an appearance that could be very correct, just guided and driven. But we need to know that what we do is purely appearance, looks. And this is a great teacher that taught us this. He used two words, two extraordinary words. He used to say, he spoke about, in both cases, reality. He said, actual reality and factual reality, it's the illusion. It's an illusion. But it's not an illusion. It's not an illusion. It's an actual reality. It's actual, yes, actual reality. And he said he was German, but he spoke English real well, and so he said actual reality. And actual reality. And factual. The factual reality is the physical. It's the thing that you've said it's identical. It's practically, if that were to be a strip of color that physically goes from up and down, well, that would be one stripe of the same color. Well, it would be exactly the same color. Rather, it's absolutely exquisite. And here, look. Well, here it's absolutely marvelous. Absolutely marvelous seeing that the two colors there, well, they're incredibly different, but underneath, you see it's identical. I mean, it's an extraordinary controversy here. It's cognitively. You have a cognition, but you see something that it's absolutely the opposite. Well, and the other one is crazy. I mean, the one on the left side, there are the boxes there. Well, oh, wait.
Sono nelle testi perché insomma questo appare uguale a questo,
appears identical to this, but actually it's this which is identical to that. Okay, doesn't matter. Sorry. I should do this with more time and so on, but it doesn't matter. So it's okay to have fallen in this trap, because this means how the color is an interactive reality. So he says interaction, unstable, unbalanced. Not stable. Cognitively, it's stable, but perceptively, no. And here, just briefly, like, how much time do we have left? 10 minutes? Yeah, 10 minutes, right. So here we go, real fast. Okay, I just want to mention this, that just one unique thing, one unique anecdote. I want to tell you the story to introduce the Italian case. Well, I was a professor in the Politecnico di Milano, and I have become the co-director of the PhD research, right? And the research PhD of design, well, when I became the coordinator of this, well, I go there and I had a young student, a young researcher who wanted to base his PhD thesis on basic design. So I go to my colleagues and I say, hey, my dear colleagues, I've got to propose you something very interesting. There's this young researcher, very refined, very good, blah, 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 who wants to do his thesis and dissertation on basic design. I see the face of my colleagues who are manifesting that face which students usually are about to be questioned and they know they haven't studied. It's exactly the same thing. So it's, that face where you're smiling but you're not. None of my colleagues. Tomas was not there. It was me acting as Tomas. Tomas wasn't there, so Maldonado was not there. And who was the coordinator? I was just there. And I see these dear friends and dear colleagues. I mean, people who are very talented. I want to say that, but they are like the great responsibles of Italian design. They are the ones that deal with academic design. Well, Castiglione was not there. He had left Milan since a while because he knows everything very good. He's a very talented guy. But all the others, I don't want to tell you the names because it's not very charming to tell you the names, but they had no clue what basic design was. So, okay, you can live happily ever after without knowing basic design. You can also be some good designers without knowing what basic design is. But in general, the good designers who do not do the basic, have done a course of basic design, they're simply people who have a greater talent, I mean, that just overcomes the fact of not knowing basic design. Good. So this was just to introduce the fact that in Italy, in the schools, in the design schools, which have been just small schools and not very important, even if super important from some other points of view, for the fact that they were like the ISEA. They were... Sorry. Sometimes I always forget about this microphone.
Allora, in Italy non c'era basic design.
There was no basic design. Substantially, there was no culture of basic design. There wasn't a culture of basic design. And therefore, no one knew what basic design was. Even if in the rest of the world everyone knows what basic design is. Well, I want to attract your attention on this fact. Because maybe they're in a certain phase, especially, in the phase that preceded us, that post-modernity. They were against basic design, but they were taking a stance in this, this phenomenon. Now things have changed. I mean, things have changed, really. I don't know if you have heard of how much we speak about simplicity all over the world. Simplicity. The simplicity brings us back to the basic design. Just another chapter that I want to close, but I want to say that the postmodern is out. Finished. Done. So, this is Munari. If you look at this object, this is a thing called A con A, B con B. A with A, B with B. It's an object which is sold by Corraini. Yes, in the Gallery 121+. Well, I'm just doing advertising because really it's something that is so beautiful that I want to advertise. If you go now to the Museo del Novecento, there is a gigantic version of this object hanging there. A con A with A, B with B. This is typically a basic thing, a basic language. Let's go on. Actually, I have to go on, sorry. You guys stay there. So this is very, very interesting. It's called Tetracono. It's always a project of Munari. How you can notice Munari was practically... I don't know if he would have accepted the fact of being baptized as basic designer, because I mean he didn't want to have any kind of definition. I mean, he was an excellent person also according to this point of view. He didn't want to be defined. I want to say that I have been pretty lucky with my teachers, my masters, because my first teacher was great protagonist has been Lucio Fontana. Then I met Munari. And then I went to Ulm and met Maldonado, and finally I found my true mentor, which would resume all my interests. Munari was this person who was extraordinary, and also he was super informed. Let me just show you this, which you may see how these two things are very resembling one another. Well, this is an object called tetracono, and this I think it's called conosfera, conic sphere or something like that. Well, this is Bruno Munari's, and it has been also done in the atelier that we had together, but okay. And this was designed by an experimenter called Bartel Scheitz in Ulm. This shows you how the same ideas, and also, what is there different here, though? What is there different between, well, this is called tetracono. It's done by Davide Boriani. Davide Boriani is exhibited in the Museo del Novecento in the tetracono. This is not tetracono, sorry. Tetracono was the other one. This is ipercubo.
Bravo.
Yes, good. Good that you corrected me. Well, this...
No, un paragone.
I'm doing a comparison. This is a sphere, a topological sphere.
Insomma, sono ricerche,
but these are researches according to a conceptual point of view, which are very close one with the other. This is a work of an artist of the Cinetic and Programmed Art called Giovanni Anceschi. And this is what we've seen before, right? I just want you to see, compare. It's that the total discourse is very close. What is there new? What do we have new now? This. What's different compared to that, or this with this? Well, okay, this also in a certain measure. What is there different substantially between these two? What does this have different from this? The movement, the interactiveness. The interactivity. These cones, these four cones of Munari touch each other. They can be spun around, and in fact, you see there are three variations, like three pictures. It's the same object, right? But photographed in three different times, at three different times. Same thing with this. This is the analogy, which is more conceptual. But in this case, the analogy is not... What's the difference? The difference is that in this case, this one moves. This is kinetic. This is called struttura. You will see that at the Museo del Novecento. It's at the Museo del Novecento, exhibited there. And it's another thing, and another extraordinary thing that I want to point out is that this is an exercise. No, this is not an exercise. This is a work of Gianni Colombo, and this is interactive. You see this, right? It's a work where the spectator works with and becomes... we could say co-author. He has the possibility of giving shape to the final configuration of this. Well, he actually has the possibility of having the pleasure of giving a configuration of this. Here we're at the yesterday, basically. This was done almost yesterday. In the sense that I just wanted to point out that in Italy, well, it is true that we did not have a university of design and we did not have basic design, right? But one thing that... Oh, thank you, marvelous. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
So the things that we have done had this peculiarity of being transformed and so on. But an entire phase has gone through, and yes, there is this abandonment of the basic during the postmodern. There is this crazy guy called Anceschi who starts hitting and being stubborn on this matter. And before the first basics, I've done anti-UA in urbanistic, and then I went to the Dams of Bologna and have done some labs, and it was not impossible to do some pragmatic work. And then finally we transfer with Maldonado to Politecnico, and the basic restarts, where the thing becomes, and therefore it is very important, very relevant, and therefore the Maldonadian and sent from away from Milan, from the directing group in Milan, because they were not agreeing with the fact that we knew what basic was, since they did not know what it meant, and so they kicked us out, basically. We go to Venice, and the basic originates, and new information and new basic originates, and hyper basic. Now, I want to show you.
Sì, forse se tu mi riuscissi a andare
if you can help me
uscire da qui.
Just go out from this. Stay.
Questo non va bene. No, via. E ci dovrebbe, eccolo lì.
Oh, here it is.
Allora la Cristina Chiappini.
So Cristina Chiappini is there? Lì. Yes, that one.
Apri. Ecco, e adesso. Oh. Di scatole di questi strumenti sono queste robe, no?
The pain of these tools is these things. They should be more automatic.
Prendiamo.
So,
wait. Indico.
Let me just point this. Okay.
Prendiamo questo.
This.
No.
Forse
sì. Sì.
Yes.
Bisogna fare con. Sì. No. Ecco.
Oh, good. So you've seen, right?
È un basic.
It's a basic.
Questo è un basic che si occupa di forme
that uses shapes which are not only the shapes of the layout, but they are actually shapes. Dynamic metamorphosis. This is Cristina Chiappini, who has done an extraordinary work in Venice. She came and she just systematically done for so many years. Look, this is. See how it changes? Cool. Maybe it's a bit too. Let's lower the volume. Let's go on. Another one, anyone. You see how taking advantage of the rollover, clicking and everything, this like the scroll down, the intrinsic interactivity tools. See? This is also pretty. It's a metamorphic game and interactive.
Bene.
Good.
Passiamo
Let's, one last thing.
un'ultimissima cosa. Grazie. Wow.
Wow.
Sì. No, aspetta, no. Sì, è quello di... Sì, bravi. Questo bisogna... Ecco. Questo è veramente interessante.
This is very interactive. Oh. Oh. Yeah, so if he speaks, it moves. I said, oh, what sadness? Oh, I cry. And so on. And so on. And so on. Oh. Boom, boom. I didn't say boonga boonga. Oh my God. I'm so scared.
No, adesso non faccio più il buffone.
No, I don't want to be so stupid anymore. I will. It's very important to have you guys realize that this is actually the essential part of our work. So we need to have fun.
Mi sembra proprio.
I think that's.
C'è qualcuno, scusate.
Is there someone? Sorry,
Mi
excuse me.
qualcuno che mi
Someone that could just take a picture of me and this, please. I really want a picture. Take a picture. It's so trendy now to have a skull, right? And so everyone's designing skulls.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Bene.
Good. Now I'm happy. We've finished. Thank you.